This is Axel Merk, President and Chief Investment Officer of Merk Investments. Starting out with a disclosure this morning so I don't forget it again. And since I've shown that, here we go. It's a Monday, not a happy Monday for everybody. It's been quite a tumultuous one in many cities in the US. Let me do the following. Let me give you a quick market update, then talk about some economic numbers and talking about what's happening in China as well. And then talk about a food for thought on a few other items. As I speak here, the S&P futures are down 2. The Dow is down 7 points. The bonds are weaker. The 10 years down 6 ticks. The 30 years down a full point and 7 ticks. The dollar is now again broadly weaker against all G10. It was like that early this morning when I got up. I'm here up in California, just for time zone reference. But then the dollar was stronger with some currencies. Anyways, the strongest currency in the G10 is the Australian dollar, up 1.12%, followed by the New Zealand dollar. On the weakest side are the safe havens, the Swiss franc and the Japanese yen, or perceived safe havens at least, I'd say. Gold is, the spot market is up $3 at 1733. It's in the futures, it's down $9 at 1742. The different closing times. And so that's part of the reason why there's a difference in these moves. The spot price is reference to New York close. The other one is a reference to Chicago closing time in its usual way of being quoted. Just back to the fixed income side, the 3-month is at 13 basis points and the 3-month LIBOR at 34 basis points. So that's continued to come down. The effective Fed funds rate at 5 basis points. In our internal briefing, we mentioned a few other things. We mentioned things like the 2-year swap rate at 25 basis points, but I'm reluctant to explain what many of these metrics are. I don't want to get too technical, so I'm skipping those. But fear not, we do monitor all kinds of other things, especially on the 2-year range. There's a lot of things. So you want to see what's being priced in relative to today and so forth. Global bonds are generally weaker. Might want to mention Germany is closed today. In the equity market, at least. I don't see a close here on the bond market. That's a bit surprising. Any case, the global equity markets, the thing that stands out, Europe is up, much of Europe is up about, the US stock 50 is up 80 basis points, but several European markets are up over 1%. Very noteworthy is the Hang Seng index was up 3.4% overnight, 2.7% for the CSI under the Chinese index. That may well be in the backdrop of a strong day on Friday in the US, where obviously Asian markets were closed already, and then obviously the market shrugging off some of the tensions that are happening. One of the things out this morning is the purchasing manager indices. Global PMIs are coming out, and as I talk, some others are continuing to come out, but I tweeted a chart of those if you want to look it up. India, Australia above estimates. Now, obviously, some of these estimates, it's difficult because they come from a very low basis. So it's the kind of the rounding error, so to speak, can be quite significant. But some of these markets coming out strong. So I was asked by somebody what I'm trying to achieve with these morning briefings, and that's a good question. So because I don't really have an agenda, trying to on the one hand give you an information update of what's happening, and then give you some food for thought. And when I don't have too much food for thought, I'll cut it short. And so I am not allowed to discuss products, so to speak, and so you don't hear me pitching any products that we at Merk Investments are offering. That format here is not suited for that. And so I'm not going to do that either. And but let me in that sense maybe take a step back and give you kind of a little anecdote. We obviously, just as many other families, I suppose, we've had discussion over the dinner table as well about all the stuff that's happening, the riots and whatnot. And And so the question came up, kind of, what are we doing to help and so forth. And I said, well, everybody helps the way um, they feel appropriate. It is within their means, and everybody thinks of it a little bit differently of what they seem to be help. Treating somebody else fairly might be appropriate for somebody, and going out to rally might be something else. And of course, part of the pushback I got is, well, you've got to do more. And when you say you got to do more, then it's usually whatever that person thinks you ought to be doing. And one of the things I have said over the years many times is that when I have my kind of microphone on a platform like this, obviously I focus on the markets. And as many of you are aware, I focus a lot on monetary policy, on fiscal policy, and so forth. And so I try to do my thing on that side of things. And the question is, well, why? What? I mean, kind of the pushback against that is, well, how does that help anybody right now? And to me, it is obviously the situation we are in right now is not just that one police officer did something that was inappropriate. There's a huge background to that, and the kind of the argument I heard is, oh, you got to reform the criminal justice system, or you got to do this, or you got to do that, and by all means, anybody who believes something should be done should fight for it. Very few of these areas are my areas of expertise, and what I have said publicly since the earlier part of the last decade is that when the sort of monetary and fiscal policies we're pursuing is increasing the wealth gap, and is if you can live on credit, you have a gangbuster life, so to speak. But this quote unquote increased efficiency also has more people fall through the cracks. And then obviously, as we similarly at that time had globalization going on, a lot of jobs shifted over to Asia. Um, People had to fall on their feet somehow, and they did so by reinventing themselves or starting new businesses and new selling their stuff online or whatever it may have been. As always, most of these businesses fail, but there will be some success stories, and part of that is, of course, the American way of doing things. But as real wages, as part of various of these pressures, kind of stagnated for a very long time. Um, there was a lot asked of the American worker, and obviously frustration grew. And with that, the political polarization was nourished, so to speak. And so here we are now, where you have some very, very different thoughts on how to go about it. One side says, hey, you got to be tougher with everybody who's riding, and the other one said, well, you got to redistribute income, or you do this or that. And that's kind of where I'm heading here. Is that I was kind of ahead of the COVID-19 outbreak. The quote unquote only thing we had was a rise in socialist sentiment, and so I was always wondering, well, what's going to be the fallout from this one? And we're starting to, I guess, see already some of the fallout that might be happening. Most notably, there's going to be an effort and a task that those who are well off should be responsible for those helping the not so well off. And by all means, I'm for a system that provides everybody an opportunity. The real challenge is that when you are going to punish the ones who are the dynamic drivers of an economy, well, you might not have so many of those anymore, and everybody's going to suffer. And one of the things President Trump pointed out is towards kind of leading into COVID-19, the lower wage people started to have a disproportionate increase in income. Now, it was very late in the cycle and so forth, and but he did have a point there. That one of the better things you can do is to help somebody who is disadvantaged, is to give him a job and give him a good wage. But obviously there are some other items that are wrong. And I had some other issues with driving the economy into a potential hot phase that could cause some other issues and may ultimately lead to inflation and other problems. So whatever one does, one is obviously going to get criticized. And um, the To me, though, it is the right thing is that one doesn't just look at the overall symptom, but looks at some of the underlying drivers. And I'm not going to be apologetic for suggesting that monetary policy has a bigger impact on the distribution of wealth than fiscal policy does, and continue preaching on that for kind of sound monetary policy, because I do think that that helps to create a stable society. I listened to a presentation um, on an update in the eurozone, and about many of these ideas about similarly bailing out folks and whatnot, and the question came up as well, what can one do? And it's really the price stability part is a very important part in creating an environment where you help especially poor people. When you have inflation, that is something that is disproportionately affects poor people as well. And so now, does that help against certain things that are not right? Otherwise, well, obviously, there's only so much that can do. Um, the the point for me was that you need to have a kind of a stable environment more broadly. Anyway, that was just a thought on that topic. Other than that, we of course have had, and this is kind of more to the point here on the spot. We've had a lockdown, so a lot of people are not just at home; they're also frustrated. And usually these protests abate at the end of the weekend when people go back to work. With so many people out of work, it is the risk is quite significant that these sort of riots and the looting and whatever comes with it are going to continue. And just one more word on that is that I think it's very unfortunate that people tend to pick sides in these debates, and then everything that comes with it, so to speak. So if you make an argument that says, "Oh, this is wrong," and I might even agree with something that's wrong. The question is, do you agree with the cure as well? Because for many, it's kind of a logical conclusion. Because this is wrong, this must be done. And reasonable people often disagree. And I think for the right reasons they disagree, because it's not so obvious always what needs to be done. And if we could have a civil debate about these issues, that would be very helpful. But it's an election year, so that may not happen. In any case, that's all I want to say about that topic for now. Try not to be too abstract. You let me know what you like me to chat about, and what I'm okay having an agenda, giving these morning briefings. I try to. There are different things you can do. I can speak only when you have something really important to say. That's one way. Or you have something as a routine. You speak every morning at a certain time. And even then, of course, I could have an agenda and tell you things. Well, my agenda is to kind of get you thinking about certain things. That obviously I may not get you thinking by giving you a market update. Maybe you can get that from elsewhere as well. Let me know whether you want to continue that. But I can only kind of focus on the in between the line reading as well. So do let me know. Obviously, at Merk we do many other things where we are far more focused on certain things. So give me some feedback as to what you like to hear and see. And with that, I am thanking you for your attention. And I'll talk to you probably tomorrow. Take care.